welcome to Off Watch, our weekly interview series. So far, we've heard from sailors, navigators, tacticians, skippers, even performance analysts about what it takes to perform at their best during the race. But we haven't heard that much about what it takes to build a campaign. So this week I sat down with Bianca Cook from New Zealand. She did the last edition of the race on board Turn the Tide on Plastic. Now she's lining up to skipper a boat in 2022. And I talked to her about building a campaign, selecting crew, and what it's like trying to learn how to be a leader herself. If you enjoy this interview, you can leave us a like and subscribe for many more. And in the comments below, let us know what you think. Enjoy. Bianca Cook's passion for sailing is infectious. She has had a love for the sport on display since sweeping the boatyards as a child to pushing the limits in the Southern Ocean on board Turn the Tide on Plastic in the last edition of the race. And she has no plans to stop. Before the boats had even seen the final finish line in The Hague, Bianca knew she wanted to try and do the race again. And it turns out that the next time will be as skipper for a New Zealand flagged boat. Bianca, thank you very much for joining me. I'm really fascinated by that because a lot of people talk about doing the race and certainly offshore in general, and you have to stop. You have to get off the boat. You have to wait for all the bad stuff to drain away before you realize, oh, this is pretty good. But I saw an interview with you and you were saying, yeah, I wanted, I knew I was going to do this race again. What was it that when you were out there, what were those moments that made you go, this is good fun and I want more?
They always say that it's a huge adrenaline rush, and that is without a doubt the absolute truth. When you're sending it down some of those ways, you're like, oh man, does this have to stop? I mean, there were certainly legs where you're like counting down the days going, okay, all right, when's this going to finish? But no, towards the end, it was, I think also as a team, excuse me, I think also as a team, we really started to kind of find our feet and become quite competitive and, really prove to the other teams in the race that we were there to actually compete and, give them a hard time. So I think, once we became more competitive, I realized that it was something that I just wanted to continue with. Don't get me wrong, after the race finished, I certainly took a break and went and did some studies and got my Officer of the Watch ticket and kind of had to sit back for a bit. And my mum was like, really? You want to do this again? But no, I mean, I'm just really, really excited to kind of, finally have the boat back in the water, which is amazing because we've had the boat for so long. But yeah, I think this race is like, it really draws you in, and I just really can't wait to just get back out there and sailing again.
Well, I want to get an update from your team and I want to hear all about it. But before I do, it's interesting that you mentioned your Officer of the Watch qualification, because it's not only the miles that pull people in to do the ocean race. I mean, you came into the last edition of the ocean race with, tens of thousands of miles, but you must see some pretty unique things and you must go to some pretty crazy places while you're down there and while you're doing it. Are you so focused on the race that you get a chance to look around and sort of take it all in? Or is there enough of a chance to go, wow, let me just soak up this view?
I mean, honestly, there's nothing like sunsets when you're out at sea. And yeah, you're definitely competitive and in the race, and your mind is in the race as much as possible. But obviously, every now and then you daydream and you take in your surroundings. And I can remember actually when we were coming around Cape Horn and then we actually had rig issues. That was kind of a chance for us all to kind of take a breath. But I cannot describe the feeling that we had then, because we were surrounded by like 20 albatross. And it was just incredible. And I'd seen albatross before, and just being surrounded by so many, it was such an incredible moment. And yeah, I've certainly I've been to quite a few places before the ocean race. I actually went through the Northwest Passage and had those moments to kind of take in and see the polar bears and see the scenery. But, when you're down there in the Southern Ocean, you're just trying to, I wouldn't say survive, that's not the right word. You're just trying to push and go as fast as possible. And every now and then when you see another boat, you're like, okay, what can we do to go just that little bit more faster? But yeah, no, you do get moments where you certainly daydreaming, sometimes daydreaming about the food you're going to get when you get ashore. But yeah, no, there's just nothing like it out there, eh?
Okay, so you're gonna go for it again. You're lining up to go for it again. And like I say, you made this decision or at least there was a burning ambition during the last race. You were one of the earlier people to really kind of make your intentions known in terms of, I want to get a boat, I want to go and do this. So what is it that you're spearheading at the moment? You've got a boat. Everything in terms of sport has been on a bit of a pause, but there you are with a vessel now on the water, a New Zealand flagged entry.
Yeah, it's just a small undertaking. Had I had a crystal ball and been able to read the future, I maybe would have made a few different changes or different decisions. But yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's been really, really tough for anyone in sport over the last couple of months, especially sports teams trying to get funding. I know we're one of the last 65s to go on the water, and it's such a relief. We were actually due to launch the boat the day we went into a nationwide lockdown down here in New Zealand. So we made that call about a week out. We could kind of see that the country's kind of moving towards that direction. So when we did eventually get to this point, down here in New Zealand, we've got our great coastal classic. It's our great race north. It's not quite as long as your Sydney Hobart or your Fastnet race, but it's a good race. And, we had that kind of in sight as our first race that we would do on the boat. And we were kind of like, well, do we just stay in the shed? Nobody knows about it. It's there. Nothing's happening. Or do we put the boat in the water, take a gamble and just go yachting? And that's the decision we've made. We've had the boat for well over a year. So yeah, just a massive relief just to be finally in the water. I can't say it enough, eh? I mean, it's been a tough couple of months. It's been a tough couple of months for everyone. But yeah, being able to be back out on the boat and sailing again, it's awesome. And when we kind of embarked on this journey, I spoke to Tony Ray, and him and I kind of came together, and his team manager, and kind of out of that, it's interesting because I had never thought of myself as kind of being the skipper of a team. I just really, really wanted to make it happen. I really wanted to see a Kiwi team back in the race, and it's kind of evolved that I've kind of taken on that role. But yeah, it's taken a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of hard work still to go.
Wait, well, I want to ask you so much about all that hard work, because so many people want to stand at the top of Everest and enjoy the view, but very few people are actually prepared to do the climb. And it seems logical when you say, I wanted to be there and I wanted to do the race. Someone's got to step up. Someone's got to put this team together. So let's start then with your boat. This is a boat that you know quite well. I mean, Turn the Tide on Plastic, rebranded. It's already done 2 laps of the planet. It was only ever meant to do 2 laps of the planet, but the 65s are going to be back for another edition. What have you needed to do since it sort of came from the boatyard in Lisbon, I guess, to you? What have you needed to do to get it up to where you need it?
Well, firstly, we had to remove all the old branding, but as you do. But we're really, really lucky. We've had the boat in the boatyard, and really we've just kind of been ticking away at it, kind of servicing things when people have been free. There's not been a huge amount of work done to the boat other than just service work to make sure that it's up and running. And we've now got the boat in the water, and we've done that really with just the support of businesses around us that really just want to see this happen, and people that want to see this happen. It was kind of strange kind of parking it for the first time without a keel. That was quite interesting because we actually had to launch the boat without the keel, and then motor it up the harbour, pull her out of the water, put the keel on, and then step the rig. But yeah, she's quite an interesting one to drive without the keel attached. It's quite foreign. But we're so lucky now that we've got the boat in the water and we're sailing. And with the current situation that's happening around the world, there's a lot of incredible ocean race sailors here in New Zealand at the moment. And, we've had the opportunity to have them sail with us and also, teach those younger guys different ways of doing things. And for me personally, I've already learned so much about what was kind of going on different boats. You could have one job, but it can be done 10 different ways. And I've already been like, oh, I wish we did it like that. That would have been way easier. But it's interesting when you get those different people and the different dynamics. And no, it's been fantastic. You know, we've also got Daryl Whistling around on board at the moment, and he's a huge wealth of knowledge. He's won the race twice in these boats. So that, you know, we're just trying to consume as much information from him as possible, and he's kind of going to help with the sailing team development. You know, we've had Justin Ferris on board, Rob Salthouse, Ryan Houston, Karen McMaster. So we've got a huge pool of people to kind of pull from, and I'm looking forward to being able to sail with a lot more.
Yeah, it's amazing set of names. I'm just thinking about them now, and I'm thinking, I must email them and find out whether they're free and whether I can do an interview with them. Because like you say, that there are some big names there. So you've got your choice, as you say. Some of the sailors are a bit grounded, so people are looking for things to do. This is a good course, you know, get people involved. But also you've got control of a boat that you sailed on as crew. How does it feel to now be, one, to have that boat back and kind of, you know, slipping into a nice, you know, well-worn pair of shoes that you know so well, but also it's now yours. You get to make the decisions. I mean, is that a bit sort of, oh God, you know, it's quite an honor, I guess.
Yeah, it is quite an honor. It was kind of interesting. You know, the first time I stepped on the boat, I was like, wow, it's like seeing an old friend, but all the other friends are missing. Yeah, it's quite surreal. But it was quite, and kind of on friends that were missing, I was actually walking through the viaduct the other day, and Bledden was walking towards me, and I hadn't seen him since the end of the race. So obviously he's down here for the America's Cup. So and he said that he'd seen the boat, and so it was quite kind of exciting. It is strange for me to be in this role. In the last race, you know, I was the last sailor to join the boat, to join the team. And I didn't join the team as a helmsman, so I never helmed really during the race. So I'm now getting that opportunity to do that, and it's a huge, I don't know. It does feel like a lot of weight kind of sits on my shoulders, especially when it comes to certain aspects. I'm having to learn a lot about, you know, people and people skills and management, I think, is probably the biggest thing. But no, it's honestly, I can't say enough. It's such a relief to have the boat in the water finally, and it's great to be out there sailing. And, you know, at the moment we just have a group of sailors that we're developing and, you know, giving them the opportunity to sail on this boat. We're not currently doing trials or selections. We're just trying to kind of build these sailors' abilities up, and, you know, we hope to kind of get as many sailors in as we can now that we have that extended start line. And, you know, we're just pushing towards getting as much time on the water as possible.
And what is that like then, in terms of every team that's announced is getting bombarded by young sailors who, like you did, wants to get involved with the race? How can I do it? And ultimately, the only real way to do it, unless you've got a previous win in the race or, you know, 100,000 miles or Olympic medals, you've got to knock on doors, you've got to send some emails. You know, how does it feel to someone like you who finally got to experience the race at the sharp end after watching it on TV screens and on docksides for years? Now you get to grant somebody, another set of young sailors, that experience. I mean, is that position a privilege, or does it just come with a sort of crushing responsibility to pick the right people?
I think it might become a bit of a crushing responsibility to pick the right people when we get a little bit closer to that start line, for sure. For now, I mean, at the moment we're in New Zealand and we can't bring in sailors from outside New Zealand at the moment. So yeah, I think it will. It's a huge honour to be in this position. And every time I get an email from anyone, whether they're in New Zealand or Germany or America, I always give them the same piece of advice: do as much sailing as you possibly can. Get as many miles as you can, whether they're on race boats or cruising boats or somebody that just needs a hand with a delivery, because you won't know if you like going offshore until you're actually out there. And it's completely different when you're cruising and racing, but you've got to get out there to experience it, to know if you love it or hate it, because that's kind of the situation. You will love it or you'll hate it. And then I kind of just let them know, there's a few qualifications that you can get, anything that you can do to kind of get your CV to stand out. It's kind of, I'm trying to give everyone the advice that I was given when I was sending a million emails to absolutely any email address that I could get my hands on.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. And I'm guessing it's not easy for those people that come on any boat to sort of stand out. I mean, one final sort of question on that was, I've always wondered about this one from someone like yourself who's been on it one side and now finds themselves through their own diligence and hard work in a position where they can, look in the other direction towards other people. When somebody steps on board your boat, or when you get these young people on, with New Zealand and they want to impress, they want to make a good impression, what is it that you're looking for in your crew members or, your people that maybe will join the team later on, or maybe just someone to rely on for the next few months? What do you look to stand out from people?
Right now, it's quite interesting that you asked that. I'm certainly looking for people that ask a lot of questions, because the more questions you ask, the more knowledge that you'll get. And also the people that you can see that maybe have a little more experience, but they're actually also showing other people on the boat how to do things. So it's interesting. I've had a different group of people, and it's the people that ask a lot of questions that also at the same time are teaching as well. And also because those sorts of people you can tell are the real team players. It's the people that hop on board and have to touch every single rope on board and hop on every single handle and be in every position. Those are the ones that are quite hard to kind of manage this early on. Also, I think leading, because when you hop onto a boat, you have to you find yourself in a particular position, and everyone hops on board and has to kind of like feel the water and see what the situation's kind of like. But I have a huge amount of respect for the people that ask questions, especially people that have never sailed these boats before. I mean, once you start getting on them and you're actually teaching people how to sail, then you realize that they're actually quite basic in terms of how things work, because there's no electronic winches or locks with buzzers and stuff on them, so that they are quite simple. But yeah, it's the people that are asking questions, people that you can see are really trying to teach other people around them. That's the sort of sailors that are great to be around at the moment.
Were you like that when you jumped on board? Because asking questions in that situation, when simultaneously you're trying to come across as, I'm a sure bet, I know what I'm doing, asking questions can feel like an admission of a lack of skill. I mean, and I completely agree with you. Actually, it's a courage to be curious and improve, which is a good thing, but it's not easy to do, is it? It's
definitely not easy to do. And I also think that when I joined the team just before we were about to start the race, and I kind of didn't have a choice but to ask questions because I didn't want to screw anything up or break anything or make us go any slower. Also, when I hopped on the boat, Dee told me that I was doing pit and I needed to own pit. So I was just trying to learn as much about the pit as I could possibly do in such a short time frame, and do it. I hope I did an okay job. I don't know. I stayed on board for the whole race, so I must have done something right.
That's always a good mark. Well, let's turn to you then. Let's turn to you, because it was interesting that you talked about a minute ago, you were mentioning sort of managing people. And about a month, I think more than a month ago, I spoke to Johan Richomme, who's the skipper for the Merpuri Foundation boat. Very successful sailor, like yourself, been there, done that, new to the race. And he was talking about the things in his life and his sailing that have taught him those science of leadership, shall we say, how to manage people, how to get the best out of yourself, all those things that wouldn't necessarily come to the top when you think about sailing skills. Have you identified any areas in yourself, or have you already had a chance to go, that I've learned that, I've sharpened that up, I've realized that I need to look at these things. That's going to make me a good skipper.
I think I have a very, very long way to go. And I have a lot to learn. And I think definitely the way you approach certain situations is something that I'm learning more and more about, and different ways that you can approach situations without upsetting people, especially because we're so early in a campaign that it's the last thing that I kind of want to do is to say something to discourage someone or to upset them. But also at the same time, you know, we're at a point in this campaign where we kind of are moving forward quite quickly. But yeah, it's actually Dee gave me a book that she said that I should read very early on, and I'm slowly making my way around it, way through it. Sorry, it's called "Turn the Ship Around," which is very interesting. It's about different leadership skills and kind of how to manage people in certain situations. But yeah, we're quite lucky. We haven't spent any nights offshore yet. I don't know if that's lucky, but I mean, I haven't quite gotten to that stage yet of, you know, going offshore and having to manage people when they're tired or hungry yet. So we're kind of very early in those stages. So far, we're, you know, keeping our crew well fed, well hydrated. And no, there's a lot to learn, and I'm certainly learning a lot more about it. But I found that, you know, you can go from managing sailors to managing people kind of on the shore side, to managing what goes on social media, to looking at the accounts. So yeah, I feel like I kind of have to juggle the hats that I wear. But yeah, no, I'm learning a lot and really taking on a lot from the people around me as well. You know, if I'm not quite sure how to handle a situation, I called Daryl the other day and I said, I need some advice. And he goes, my dad's in the car. And I said, maybe he can help me too. It was, you know, I'm very, very lucky that I have the people around me that I can kind of lean on and get advice on. And no, it's great to have that support.
Well, I want to ask about Tony Ray and Daryl and all the rest of it, because that must be quite an honour to sort of have these people on tap. But, you know, you mentioned Dee. No skipper is perfect, and no relationship between the skipper and the sailor is perfect. But I wonder, with the skippers that you've been under, like Dee Kafari in the last edition of the race, has there been any examples of that was a good way to handle that? That was a good way to motivate us there, keep us safe, keep us performing. You know, have you been able to sort of plow through and sort of, you know, reap some good memories and go, if I'm in that situation again, that's how I'm going to do it?
Yeah, definitely. Especially with Dee, she was very good at kind of motivating us as a team when we were quite down, especially kind of towards the end of the race when kind of the comms that were coming around our team were, you know, maybe they'll get a podium finish for this one. And, turn Southern Plastic, they're out in front. Maybe they'll get a podium finish for this one. And for us as a team, that was obviously we wanted a podium finish. But the more and more it was talked about, the more heavy it weighed on our shoulders. And Dee was quite kind of good at kind of upping us and being like, look, we're capable of doing this. We can do this as a team. So she was very good at that, especially kind of down in the Southern Ocean, in the second Southern Ocean leaving Auckland. She was a great leader and very good at kind of motivating us and some of us sailors when we're kind of cold and tired and kind of not really seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So she was great like that. And I've also been extremely lucky in that, you know, my sailing outside of racing, with working on super yachts, I worked under some incredible captains who really had extremely good leadership skills, especially when it came to, you know, managing people. So I've learned a lot of things off them that I'm trying to kind of cross over, kind of trying to join my two lives of racing and super yachting together. Never thought I'd say that.
Well, no, but it makes sense. I mean, that's where you cut your teeth. And that, like you say, that's where you learn to love it as well. That's the bit where you realize, actually, I really do enjoy this. So let's fast forward then. Let's say after the next edition, I'm here and I'm interviewing one of the people off your boat. And I say to her, amazing performance, incredible. Bianca Cook, what kind of skipper was she? What is it that you want them to say?
Wow. I guess she did absolutely everything she could to make sure that we were a competitive team, a humble team, and we did everything we could to win that race. I'm
I'm sure you have something that you can imagine, but I could also see your humble nature standing in front of that. So I will leave that one to you, and you can kind of you can mull over that one on your own. So let's talk then about Tony Ray. So you've got this team. You announced a long time ago your intention to go and do this, and like any team, every bit feels like a slog until you're there, and then you go, now we've got a boat, oh, now we've got this, and now we've got that. But all the way through this, you've had, like you were mentioning, you've had some pretty big names and some pretty broad shoulders to kind of, bounce some ideas on. Tony Ray, working with you, this is a big name, not just in the ocean race, but sailing as well. I think he's done 6 campaigns in the ocean race, multiple America's Cups. What's the relationship like between the two of you? Is it, in terms of decision making, in terms of responsibilities, is he a sounding board, or does he get actively involved in the kind of, no, we need to do this, we need to do that?
All of the above. Firstly, it's an absolute honour to have him involved. We kind of spoke about it very, very early on, and I kind of said to him, "Well, I'll only do this if you're in it with me." And he turned around and said to me, "Well, I'll only do it if you're in it," which was a huge honour for me to hear him say that. And it's been a great working relationship, kind of moving forward. And, he's great to bounce ideas off. He's also great to kind of be like, right, I'm going to own this. I'll take this on. Let's move forward with this. And the moment we're kind of splitting roles with regards to kind of getting everything moving. But he's been great at, making sure that if there's something that needs to be done, he'll make sure it gets done. And, I've learned a huge amount from him already, and I've got a lot more to learn. As he said, sailed around the world 6 times and has done over 8 America's Cup. So, excuse me. He's got a wealth of knowledge there, but not only that, he's an awesome coach, a great sailor on the boat. You also can't keep him still. It was quite... Unfortunately, the first time we went out sailing, he was out with Team New Zealand, and I was like, oh my gosh, we were only going out and testing systems, but he said he was absolutely gutted. We'd been working on this campaign for so long to see the boat sailing for the first time, and he wasn't on board. So the next time we went out sailing, he was like a kid in a candy store, and it was great to see. And he was bouncing all around the boat and doing, showing the guys how to do main and talking about trim, and then we were looking at the graphics on the sail. So we had our sailing hats on, but also maybe our marketing and comms hats on, as you do. But yeah, no, it's been great having him on board, and he is sailing on board at the moment, coaching those younger sailors as well. So a huge amount of knowledge there.
And as you say, he obviously loves it, but make sure I've got this one right. He's not lining up to be on the boat for the next edition.
That's definitely not his plan. He is the team manager. He said, if I'm on the boat, something's gone wrong. And I was like, I don't know if that's, that's how we put it. I said, I don't think that's quite the right thing to say. But no, he's really ambitious about, training up these younger sailors and giving them the opportunities that he had when he was younger. He went to Sir Peter Blake before the Lion campaign, and Peter Blake said, you're too young, come back to me when you're older. So he joined Peter Blake for his Lion campaign, Steinlager campaign, and then he did New Zealand Endeavour, and so on and so on. And so he's really, really excited about getting these younger sailors on board, giving them those opportunities that aren't really around at the moment. And the whole reason for this campaign is, and especially for Trey, as he said, he's been to the last couple of races and stopovers, and every time it comes to Auckland, they're always like, oh, it'd be so good to have a Kiwi boat back in the race. There's lots of Kiwi sailors, but it'd be great to have a Kiwi flag boat back in the race. So that's what he's really passionate about. And for us, here in New Zealand, it's all about, reigniting New Zealand's passion for ocean sailing again, because everyone remembers those, those Blakey days, the Steinlager days, the New Zealand Endeavour days, and, people are starting to get excited about it again.
It's really interesting you mentioned that, because I'm sure it's not your motivation and your intention, but when you get to the start line, there's going to be a lot of things that you will have achieved in terms of, one, bridging 10 years. It was camper, wasn't it? So, big gamp for any sort of New Zealand flagged entry. Then you've got female skipper. That's rare, but then a Kiwi female skipper, and I believe that would be a first. There's all these things. But I'm sure that's not why you're doing it. But like you say, there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of weight and pressure that kind of comes with that. And if I've got it, 31, I think you are. It's a big project for somebody in offshore sailing. Is comparatively quite young.
Yeah, I think the thing that always gets me is this first female Kiwi skipper. I have to say it's not a statement that I'm a huge fan of. I think because, one, it's not something I was even aware of until the media kind of made hype about it here in New Zealand, because there have been, there's incredible skippers that have come before me, both male and female. Yes, I happen to be a female, maybe potentially the first Kiwi female skipper, but I feel like that's a statement that's so bold that can't be said until we're actually on the start line of the ocean race in 2022. But yeah, it's a huge undertaking, and every time I hear that, I'm like, ugh.
I won't say it again.
So Niall, never again. That's okay. But no, I think it. Yes, I'm probably pretty bold and maybe a little naive, but we are very lucky in that we do have a little more time. But I'm also extremely lucky in that I have a huge amount of support by the people that have surrounded me just in the last couple of months. So I'm really, really looking forward to this journey. And it feels a little longer now, but I think that's a good thing, actually. It'll give me a lot more time to, find my feet. And yeah, it is a huge undertaking, and not one I take lightly at all.
You're not that bold. I mean, don't get me wrong, you're doing a good job, but it's not that unusual. Charlie Enright, Mark Tao, when they put together Team Alva Medica, I think when the race started, Charlie was your age, and I think Mark Towell is 4 years younger. So, and look at what they've gone on to achieve. So on the age front, it's unusual, but I think that's becoming more and more respected. You sparked a little thought in my mind, though, when you mentioned the female sailors. And I think that from my point of view, I've been doing this interview series for a while now, and we've been interviewing a lot of female sailors who have gone there and done the race multiple times, some of them. Have you seen any change? Now, you're announcing you want to be a female skipper. Like you say, that's not your motivation, and that's not really what you're all about, but you are. And for some young female sailors that are growing up, they might empathize a bit more with you than they might do with a male sailor. Maybe not. But do you see a bit of a difference when you walk into a room now in terms of you're recognized for a sailor maybe a little bit quicker than you would have been, 6 years ago, when in the ocean race, certainly having females in was quite a rarity?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Obviously I worked on super yachts for so long and was a female in a male-dominated industry, and was kind of the only female on deck amongst males. And I earned the respect that I needed in that particular position. And now I think we're extremely lucky down here in New Zealand in that it's very rare for you to find a boat that will go out club racing that doesn't have a female on board. But I also think, there's been incredible sailors that have come before me, and that will continue to come after me. And it's interesting, it's very rare to refer to male sailors as male sailors. And I think as a female sailor in the industry, we're kind of getting to that point where we're not female sailors, we're sailors. And it is definitely improving. And it's fantastic to see, the respect that I get when I walk into a room, and maybe people are a little bit surprised at first when I first meet them, but it's definitely changing. It's improved a lot. I've been extremely lucky with my sailing career in that it's never really been an issue. In fact, I felt that it wasn't until I joined the ocean race that it was really hyped up and became an issue that I was never really aware of in my sailing background. Because my sister and I had always just grown up sailing with everybody, and maybe we were the only females on board, but it wasn't a thing. And that's the situation now. Is it's no longer a thing. We've had a lot of comments on all of our social media saying, "Oh, it's so great to see so many females on board." We're like, "Nah, there's 10 sailors, 10, 11 sailors. Okay, they might be female, but." And I think that's kind of where we're going to, is that, yes, there's still a long way to go. But where we are at the moment is due to the incredible sailors that have come before us.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I just add something to that. I mean, I think it's interesting that I think it changes more the young male opinion when you go picture an offshore round the world sailor. You might now picture a female as many times as you pick a male, because there's some great role models on either side, and they're just in terms of sheer numbers. So I imagine for your outlook and your mentality, it hasn't changed anything. But I think the next generation has horizons potentially been a little bit broadened. And hey, there's just more good sailors for people to look up to. But you mentioned generations. Is it interesting having someone like Tony Ray that has done so much in terms of the race? Do you're a youth team. I mean, that seems to be where you're kind of batting from, and you've got some people. Do you ever see those stark differences between how much the race has changed, the attitude of the sailors has changed, and the lifestyle of being a yachty has changed over the years?
Yeah, I definitely, there are certain things that you're like, interesting. But also Tony Ray was in his early 20s when he first did the race. And, when they did the race and when it was the Whitbread, they had a chef on board. So, they're going around Cape Horn with roast chicken. Whereas we're lucky if we get roast chicken freeze dry. There's definitely elements that are very interesting, but also there's a huge amount of knowledge and wisdom there too. But in saying that, Tony Ray is extremely open to the younger sailors, not necessarily like telling him how to do something, but more asking him the question in a way that's like, well, what about if we did it like this? And he's completely open to it, which is great. And, that's where we're at with this campaign, is that it's all about development right now. So, everyone's kind of learning things differently and learning different ways of doing things. But yeah, it's interesting people's, outlooks on how certain things have to be done, because that's the way that it's always been done. But we're really lucky in that, everyone's got a completely open mind, and with all these incredible sailors coming on board, it's all about consuming as much information from them as possible. Like I said earlier, there's 10 ways to do one job, and we'll find one way that works best for us.
Do you ever get starstruck? I mean, you're coming into contact with some pretty big names. Do you ever get starstruck?
I'll tell you when I was starstruck. I was starstruck when we were going to the start line for the Sydney Hobart race in 2018, and it was on the Wild Oat 66 with Ocean Respect Racing. And it was on the bow with Caroline and Kieran McMaster and Katie, and I was on the bow going, wow, I can't believe I'm about to do the Sydney Hobart with you guys. I was completely starstruck. And they turned around to me and they were like, what are you talking about? And I was like, you guys are being my role models for the last 10 years. And now I get to do the Sydney Hobart for the first time, but the Sydney Hobart with you as incredible sailors. And yeah, that's definitely when I became starstruck. Sorry to all the guys that have been sailing with us recently, but yeah, that was my moment. And, you know, I'm really, really lucky, like Karen McMaster, you know, she kind of became a role model for me, especially after the Sydney Hobart, you know, and she's been a huge sounding board for me. And we had her out, she came out sailing with us a couple of weekends ago, and it was just fantastic to have her a part of, you know, the bigger picture. But yeah, that's definitely my starstruck moment was Sydney Hobart Race 2018.
Does that ever stop? I'm thinking back to an interview that I did with Dee, and Dee was talking about every single time she walked in to do the press conference, she'd feel like she didn't belong there, as in, wow, look at all these amazing sailors and there's me. Do you think you're ever going to kind of get over that moment where you'll sail with these people and you'd go, yeah, I mean, they're probably really excited about sailing with Bianca Cook?
Yeah, no, I don't. I think I'm with Dee there. I'll definitely, like, I felt like that every time I stepped on the boat for the race. You know, every time we were there and we're starting a race and we're sailing with amazing sailors, but also against amazing sailors in the ocean race. And I don't think I ever got over that feeling. And yeah, I'm with Dee. I to be able to stand even alongside Dee. Yeah, it's a huge honor, and one that you almost don't feel like is yours. Yeah, it's I'm still trying to get used to kids saying to me, "Oh my gosh, you're so amazing!" You know, we see you as such a role model. And I'm like, hey, yeah, it's a strange feeling.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it comes with a burden as well, and I'm sure ultimately it's rewarding. And on that thing about rewards, your campaign at the moment is in the part where it's probably the least rewarding. You're here to do the race, and the race is some way off. And the bit that you're in now is the unglamorous, you know, workout in terms of, right, we've got to bring all these different parts together. So, you know, the next sort of few months, obviously with the, you know, the pandemic and the restrictions, we don't quite know exactly which ways are going to go. But what are your immediate focus, your immediate goals, maybe some milestones that you're trying to get a little bit closer?
One thing that we've kind of realised is we're down here in New Zealand is that we can only control what we can do here in New Zealand at the moment. It's fantastic to see the Europe race just announced. I find it I don't know if we'll be able to make it there, but like I said, we can only control what we can control. So, you know, at the moment, our plan is to obviously do this great coastal classic race to Russell. That'll be our first race. That's next Friday, which I'm really looking forward to, because last year the organisers of the race said, "Oh, you know, you'll be on the start line," and I said, "The boat's only just arrived in the country, so we won't quite make it." But you know, we had all these races lined up that we wanted to do this year. But it's actually, you know, I'm really excited that this is going to be the first race for the boat. After that, we have a couple of local long mile races that we'll get involved in. And we'll plan to do kind of a bit of a tour around New Zealand, giving back to the communities, giving back to the communities that, you know, won't usually see one of these boats. And there's just so many young kids that are really, you know, starting to get into sailing or don't know about sailing. You know, I've never even seen one of these boats before, that we really want to, you know, kind of go back to the thing of, you know, really igniting their passion for ocean racing or ocean sailing. And, you know, if we can inspire some young kid down in Dunedin to get into ocean sailing, then, you know, that's a huge achievement for us. And obviously, you know, we love to be, you know, on the start line of the Sydney Hobart. Probably not this year, definitely, hopefully next year. But yeah, so we're going to kind of start with kind of what we can do here locally, and then we'll start doing those longer miles, working up those skills in those younger sailors. And then 2022, hopefully making the start line of the ocean race. That is the ultimate goal, for sure. it feels like a very long way away, and like we've got a lot of work to do before we get there. But yeah, I guess we just got to work on the small steps now, and hopefully we excite some sponsors by just being out there as a big, huge billboard saying your name here, maybe. But yeah, you know, we've got a long way to go, but it's just great to be back in the water, and sailing around the Hodaki Gulf.
I mean, from my experience anyway, for what it's worth, I think the first thing that you need to carry you through all the highs and lows is the passion for it, and you've definitely got the passion for it. Bianca, I know you've got a full day. It's just morning where you are, and it's nighttime here. So let's say our goodbyes, but we're going to be watching you guys very closely. And good luck when you guys start getting your racing miles under your belt.
Thank you so much, Mal.
Bianca Cook from New Zealand, well on her way to the start line for 2022. But a really interesting insight as to what it takes to have all that responsibility come down on your shoulders. If you enjoyed this interview, you can like and subscribe for the rest of the interviews that we've got coming up. And we're always looking to book the guests that you want. So let us know in the comments below who you want to hear from. See you next time.